Normandy coast, France, 2 hours. 30. 2 men lay prone in wet grass 200 meters from a coastal radar installation. The channel wind carried salt spray inland, soaking through wool and canvas. No one moved. Breathing was controlled, shallow, audible only to the man directly beside each soldier. The radar mast rose black against low cloud, its rotating antenna a slow mechanical sweep visible in silhouette. Weapons were loaded. Grenades hung from webbing. Bangalore torpedoes lay ready beside the lead sappers. Each man knew his assignment: building, entry point, placement of charges, withdrawal route. The rehearsals had been conducted 14 times over the previous 9 days on a mock-up constructed inland. No light showed from the installation. No voices carried across the open ground. Sentries had been observed during approach. 2 men patrolling the perimeter fence at irregular intervals. Their last pass had been 6 minutes earlier. The next would come within 4 minutes, possibly less. The signal to advance had not been given. The officer in command remained motionless at the front of the formation, face turned toward the target. His hand rested on the ground beside him. It did not rise. The seconds accumulated without marker. The raid force belonged to a commando unit tasked with destroying German radar facilities along the French coast prior to the planned invasion. The installation at Point de la Hague had been identified through aerial reconnaissance as a rehearsed radar, a precision unit used for directing coastal artillery and night fighter operations. Its elimination was considered essential to reducing defensive capability during the amphibious landings scheduled for early June. The force had been transported across the channel by motor torpedo boat, landing on a rocky beach 4 kilometers west of the target at 0145 hours. The approach had been conducted on foot through coastal farmland, navigating by compass and pre-memorized terrain features. No lights were used. Communication was by hand signal only. The officer commanding the raid was a major, 31 years old, with 18 months of operational experience in combined operations. He had led 7 previous raids, 5 against coastal installations, 2 against inland transport infrastructure. All had been completed as planned. Casualties had been light. He was considered reliable and precise in execution. The target sat on elevated ground overlooking the channel, surrounded by a 2-meter chain, link fence topped with barbed wire. 3 buildings comprised the installation: a operations blockhouse constructed of reinforced concrete, a wooden barracks structure, and a generator shed. The radar mast stood adjacent to the blockhouse. Estimated garrison strength: 12 to 18 personnel, primarily Luftwaffe signals troops with a small Wehrmacht Guard detachment. The plan called for simultaneous entry through 2 points in the fence, demolition of the radar equipment and operations room, and withdrawal before local reinforcement could arrive. Expected duration from entry to withdrawal 11 minutes. Commando doctrine emphasized speed, surprise, and overwhelming local force. Raiders were trained to move quickly from concealment to contact, minimize exposure during approach, and execute demolition tasks without hesitation. The objective was destruction of equipment, not engagement with garrison forces unless resistance was encountered. Every man in the formation had been selected for physical endurance and technical proficiency. Sappers carried specialized demolition charges designed for radar installations, shaped explosives that could destroy delicate electronic equipment without requiring entry into hardened structures. Infantry provided security and suppression of any defensive response. Medical personnel carried trauma supplies and morphine. The rehearsals had been exhaustive. Each team member could execute his assigned task in darkness without verbal instruction. Timing was precise. The first sapper team would breach the fence at the northern corner, while the second team breached at the southeast. Infantry would move immediately to the barracks and generator shed, securing doors and windows. Sappers would advance to the radar, mast, and blockhouse, place charges, set timers, and withdraw. Total time from breach to explosion, 7 minutes. Resistance was expected to be minimal. Previous raids on similar installations had encountered scattered small arms fire, but no coordinated defense. Most garrison personnel were technical specialists, not infantry. Standard procedure was to suppress any response with immediate automatic weapons fire, complete demolition, and withdraw before local reserves could mobilize. The major had briefed the mission 3 times. Each briefing had been identical, clear, factual, without embellishment. He had answered questions briefly and directly. He had expressed no concern about the operation's feasibility. The force had rehearsed the final approach 4 times, including navigation in darkness and deployment into assault positions. Every movement had been timed and corrected. By the night of June 3, the sequence was automatic. The major lifted his head slightly. He did not signal. He remained in position, staring toward the installation. His hand moved to his chest, then dropped back to the ground. He turned his head to the left, where his second in command lay 3 meters away. The second officer looked toward him. The major made no gesture. 30 seconds passed. The major shifted his weight forward as if preparing to rise. He did not rise. He lowered himself flat again. Behind him, the formation remained motionless. No one adjusted position. No weapon moved. The major's breathing was audible to the man beside him. Measured, steady, unchanged. 1 minute became 2. The sentry patrol would return in less than 90 seconds. The window for undetected approach was closing. The major did not move forward. He did not signal withdrawal. He lay still. At 3 minutes, the second in command began to shift weight onto his elbows, preparing to crawl forward to the major's position. The major raised his left hand 6 inches from the ground, palm down. A signal to hold position. The second officer stopped. The formation held. Men glanced toward each other without turning their heads. No one spoke. The sappers, positioned at the front beside their equipment, remained ready but motionless. The Bangalore torpedoes lay undisturbed in the grass. 4 minutes passed. The sentry patrol emerged from behind the generator shed, 2 figures moving slowly along the perimeter fence. They carried rifles slung over shoulders. They did not appear alert. Their path took them along the eastern fence line, away from the formation's position. They disappeared behind the blockhouse. The major watched them pass. He did not move. 5 minutes. Then 6. The clouds began to thin at the western horizon. The darkness, which had been absolute during the approach, started to lift imperceptibly. Individual blades of grass became visible. The outline of equipment gained definition. At 7 minutes, the second in command crawled forward. He moved slowly, minimizing sound, covering the 3 meters in 45 seconds. He positioned himself beside the major and leaned close without speaking. The major turned his head toward him, but said nothing. The second officer whispered something inaudible to the nearest man. The major made no response. He continued staring toward the installation. At 8 minutes, the major pushed himself backward, away from the forward position. He moved 10 meters to the rear, then stopped and gestured for the second officer to follow. The 2 men conferred in whispers, too quiet to be heard by the formation. The conference lasted less than 30 seconds. The major returned to the front. He did not resume his position. He remained crouched, partially upright. At 02:26 hours, the major signaled withdrawal by raising his right arm and pointing to the rear. The formation began moving backward in sequence, each man crawling 5 meters before rising to a crouch and continuing. No explanation was provided. No discussion occurred. The reason? As later documented in the major's brief, written report filed upon return to England, was listed under operational observations. Target assessment during final approach revealed presence of secondary defensive structures not identified in reconnaissance photographs. Assessment fortification level inconsistent with intelligence estimate. Proceeding risked unacceptable casualties without corresponding operational value. The secondary defensive structures referenced in the report were 2 small concrete pillboxes positioned on either side of the blockhouse, partially concealed by camouflage netting. They had not been visible in aerial photographs taken 3 weeks earlier. The major had identified them during the final observation period while lying in the assault position. Each pillbox had firing slits oriented to cover the approaches to the installation. The presence of pillboxes indicated a defensive posture more sophisticated than expected. It suggested the garrison included trained infantry, not solely technical personnel. It implied the installation had been reinforced, possibly in response to increased raiding activity along the coast in preceding weeks. The major's assessment was procedural. The mission as planned would require suppression of the pillboxes before demolition teams could advance. Suppression would require additional time and firepower. Additional time increased exposure to reinforcement from nearby units. The force carried no weapons capable of effectively engaging hardened positions at range. Direct assault on the pillboxes would result in casualties that could not be justified by the operational gain of destroying one radar installation. He made no appeal to preservation of life. He cited no ethical consideration. His written report contained 3 sentences explaining the decision. It concluded, withdrawal executed without contact. Force returned to beach 0310 hours. Extraction completed 0340 hours. The formation withdrew in sequence, moving through the same route used during approach. The major remained at the rear until all personnel had passed his position, then followed. No lights were used. Movement was slow and controlled. By 45 hours, the force had cleared the immediate area around the installation and reached the cover of a tree line 1 kilometer to the west. At the tree line, the major halted the formation and conducted a brief head count. All 32 men were present. No equipment had been abandoned. No contact had occurred. The formation rested for 10 minutes while security teams moved forward to confirm the route ahead remained clear. No one spoke during the rest period. The sappers repacked their demolition charges. The Bangalore torpedoes were redistributed among carriers. Water was consumed in small sips. Several men smoked, cupping cigarettes to conceal the glow. The major stood slightly apart from the formation, facing back toward the installation. His second, in command, approached and stood beside him. No conversation took place. After 2 minutes, the second officer returned to the formation. At 155 hours, the major signaled resumption of movement. The formation proceeded to the beach without incident. The motor torpedo boat remained on station, engines idling quietly offshore. Embarkation was completed by 0340 hours. The vessel departed immediately, running southwest at low speed until clearing coastal radar coverage, then increasing to full speed for the return crossing. The channel crossing was conducted in silence. Men slept where they sat. The major remained on deck, standing at the stern rail. He did not speak to the boat's commander or his own officers during the return. The force arrived at the English port at 6:20 hours. Debriefing was conducted at 900 hours. The major's account was brief and factual. No questions were asked regarding the decision to withdraw. No formal inquiry followed the aborted raid. The major's report was filed with the operational summary for June 1944 and marked routine. No commendation was issued. No criticism was recorded. The mission was listed as incomplete due to tactical reassessment. The radar installation at Point de la Hague was not targeted again before the invasion. It remained operational through June 6 and into the weeks following. Its contribution to German defensive coordination during the landings could not be isolated from other radar facilities along the coast. No after-action analysis attempted to quantify the impact of its survival. The 32 men who participated in the raid were reassigned to other operations within 10 days. 4 were killed in subsequent actions before the end of June. The remainder survived the war. None wrote accounts of the aborted mission. In post-war interviews conducted decades later, 2 veterans of the unit mentioned a raid that was called off at the last moment. Neither could recall the specific target or date. The major's service record shows no notation of the incident beyond the filed report. He led 3 more raids before the end of July, all completed as planned. He was promoted to lieutenant colonel in August 1944. He received no decoration related to the decision at Point de la Hague. The installation itself was captured by Allied ground forces on June 19, 1944. The garrison surrendered without resistance. The 2 pillboxes identified by the major were confirmed in post-capture inspection. Each had been manned and equipped with MG-34 machine guns, positioned to cover the northern and southern approaches. The major returned to civilian life in December 1945. He worked as a civil administrator in post-war reconstruction programs until 1952, then entered private industry. He did not publish memoirs. He declined interview requests from military historians until 1968, when he provided a single recorded statement for an official regimental history project. In that interview, he was asked whether any operation during the war stood out as particularly difficult. He answered, "Most were difficult in small ways. The successful ones are remembered. The others are not. When asked specifically about operations that were not completed, he said plans change. Conditions change. Sometimes proceeding is not possible. He did not elaborate. The interviewer did not press further. He died in 1981. His personal papers, donated to a military archive, contained no diary entries or correspondence related to the June 3 raid. His service record listed 17 operational deployments between 1943 and 1945. The Pointe de la Hague mission appeared only as a reference number in a chronological log. Of the 32 men in the formation that night, 9 were interviewed for various historical projects between 1970 and 2000. None mentioned the aborted raid without prompting. When asked directly about operations that did not proceed as planned, most cited equipment failures, weather delays, or intelligence errors. One NCO, when shown the operational log for June 3, 1944, recalled lying in grass near a radar installation and then withdrawing. He could not remember why the withdrawal occurred. The major's second in command, who had crawled forward to confer during the pause, survived the war and emigrated to Canada. He was interviewed once in 1977. He stated that the major had been a careful officer who evaluated conditions thoroughly. He did not discuss specific operations. The radar installation at Pointe de la Hague was dismantled by Allied forces in the summer of 1944. The mast was removed. The blockhouse was stripped of equipment and later demolished during coastal fortification clearance operations. The pillboxes remained until the 1950s, when they were buried during land reclamation work. No marker commemorates the site. The field where the raid force lay on the night of June 3 has been converted to pasture. The tree line used during withdrawal was removed in agricultural expansion during the 1960s. The beach where embarkation occurred is now part of a coastal nature reserve. In archives, the mission appears in a single-file operational summary, personnel manifest, major's report. The report is 2 pages. The explanation for withdrawal is contained in 3 sentences. No supporting documentation exists. No follow-up inquiry was filed. What remains is the pause. 32 men in wet grass. A major staring at a target. 2 pillboxes concealed beneath netting. A signal given to withdraw instead of advance. A formation moving backward into darkness. No charges placed. No explosions. No contact. No casualties. The raid that ended before it began.